my friends, and welcome to this video today. So in today's video I'd like to talk about something that I call the photographer's paradox. And what I mean by that is that if you are a photographer who wants to start making money from their photography, you will need a portfolio and experience to attract clients. But to get this portfolio and the experience, you need clients in the first place. So this is basically an everlasting circle of doom, if you want to call it like this, because the clients only book you if you have references, and you only get the reference, for example, a portfolio, if you had already some clients to work with. And today I talk about how you can overcome this barrier and break out of the circle and start making money from your photography. And I talk about things that at least worked for me pretty good when I started out a few years back. So if you're interested in this topic, stay tuned, stick around. Here's a quick intro and then we are good to go. So as always, before we can get started, I'd like to tell you a few things here, but you can skip this. I will put a timestamp down below now, so you can skip right to the start of the tutorial, if you want to call it like this. So what I want to tell you before we can get started is the reason why I'm doing this video and the reason why I think I am in a position to talk about this at all. So basically, I started photography a few years back, at least professional photography or photography that generates income. So it is not so long ago that I was at the point, so I believe the things I talk about today are still valid today. So they are not obsolete, or I'm not in the business for like 10, 15, 20 years. So I think the tips I give you, they are pretty recent, and I think this might be valuable to you. Another thing is that I don't have huge social media presence. I mean, I do have this YouTube channel with like 10 followers, which is great, but it is not much. And I have an Instagram account with a few followers, but all of that doesn't bring me any clients basically. So I really started at zero, and the people who booked me, they didn't book me because I was somewhat of a social media celebrity, if you want to call it like that. But they booked me because I attracted them in other ways, and I want to talk about that today, obviously. Also, I don't had any connections into the field of photography. I don't had connections to, for example, wedding photographers who took me along as a second shooter or stuff like that, where it is basically a little bit easier to get into the field and to get pushed into that direction. But I did not have this, so I think this speaks for a lot of people out there who also have no connections to the field of professional photography. And that is another reason why I think this video might be of some value. And with that said, I talk about wedding photography, event photography, and real estate photography today. And these are the fields where I earn my money from. And I believe these are the fields of photography where it is the easiest to get into and make some money when you're just starting out. So stick around and let's get started now. So when I just started out, I first thought about how potential clients get to know me in the first place, which is obviously very important. So I created a website, and I would definitely recommend to do so, but don't spend too much time on your website, because let's face it, most people will not come over your website in the beginning, and they will not find you through your website because no one knows your name and no one knows that you are a photographer. So make sure your website looks decent and works fine on all devices, and don't spend like weeks or months on creating the perfect website. You can still make it better later on, but in the beginning it is not so important. And when I realized that, I changed my strategy. I researched on the internet on what I could do, and I found, for example, some agencies that list photographers. So these agencies are, in my case, from Germany, obviously, but you can find them in basically any country, I believe. And to get listed in such an agency, basically in a photography agency, you also will need some references. So the agencies can send you to clients and accept you in the first place. So this is also important. And I thought about where I could get my references and my portfolio. And when it comes to, for example, real estate photography, this is honestly not so difficult, because, for example, you can go out and shoot famous buildings in your city, or not so famous buildings. You can ask friends if you can shoot their home. If they have, for example, a cool living room which looks cool, you can ask them if you can come around and take some pictures of it, and so that you just have a few pictures in the beginning to start out with. And I've done that. I've went to my local city, I've went to my town hall, which looks reasonably stunning, I believe. I went to some other buildings, did some interior shots. at my friends' houses, as I just said. So this honestly worked well because I found the agency that listed me and they sent me to some clients in the beginning. It didn't happen so often that they sent me to clients, but yeah, like 1 or 2 times a month it happened, and this was honestly pretty good for the beginning. Another thing that you can do to get some references when it comes to, for example, real estate or commercial photography is, basically use your activities and make a portfolio of them. For example, what I did is I went on vacation to a nice hotel on the beach. And when I went there, I brought my drone, as I always do when I'm on vacation, and I just flew around the hotel and took some nice shots there. Later on, I edited these shots, and then I contacted the hotel itself and I asked them, I sent them the clips and I asked them if I could use their hotel as a reference on my website, and they actually said yes. So that was pretty cool. I had this reference on my website then, and obviously I didn't get any money from that, but they got the free footage of their hotel that they could use, for example, for advertising purposes, and I got the references on my website. However, please note that it's not always legal to fly nearby these hotels, and you should ask beforehand, before you fly over an hotel area. Ask the staff if it is okay and you are allowed to do so, and then go ahead and try this out. I think this is honestly pretty cool, and just a quick side note here on what you can do. So that is for real estate photography. However, I also wanted to do wedding and event photography. And sadly, when it comes to wedding photography, this is not so easily done as with real estate photography, because for example, you can't just go to a random wedding from people that you don't know and start taking pictures there. I mean, technically speaking, you could do it, but you will most likely get arrested or stuff like that, and we don't want that to happen. So this is not so easy. So what you can do is offer your services for free. For example, if you have friends that have a wedding, so you can take some pictures there. And this is generally speaking a good way to do it. But if you don't have a friend's wedding, for example, right around the corner right now, then you have to do something else. And that is exactly what I've done. So as I just told you, I listed with some agencies, but I also created accounts on photography websites that are basically there to provide a bridge between people who are searching for photographers and photographers who can list themselves, create an account there, and then show their portfolio, show their pictures there. And then basically if a client sends a general request to all the photographers in the area, you can reply to that, and then they have like a lot of people, a lot of photographers who send them their offers, and then they can decide which one they take. And this is what I've done in the beginning. And in my personal example, I used, for example, a website called fotografensuche.de, which is a German website, but as said, I believe such websites exist in basically any country. It just makes sense. So these websites, they will charge you a little bit of money to get the full features and the full access to all the features they offer, and I would definitely recommend using that and spending that money. It is like $20 a month in my example here, and this is really, really good invested money, because ever since I've got this account, every single month I've got at least one new client from that, which is pretty cool. So it always pays out. But as I said in the beginning, and as you might know, you will most likely not have a big portfolio of, in this example, wedding and events photographies. So what can you do to attract the first clients in this way? So the competition in the wedding photography market, for example, is quite big. So what you can do in the beginning to attract the attention of potential clients is to lower your prices. Go really low, like $200, $300, $400 for a wedding, which is way too low. It is way too less money, but it will get you the attention. And then it will just take time, I believe. For example, I wrote, like dozens of different requests to different clients, and I got nearly 0 replies. But at one day, I got my first reply, and I got my first booking for a wedding from a client. And honestly, this was pretty cool. It was way too cheap, but they still booked me, even though I had no references. And as I said, this will take a little bit of time, or even a little bit more of time, honestly. But at some point, you will get your first client, I believe. And you just have to stick around. Do not demotivate yourself, and just write one request after another. Make a good first impression, write a good email, and get the clients a good offer. And another reason why my first client booked me, they told me that later, was that I had an Instagram account where I shared my personal pictures, for example, landscape shots, because I love to landscape photography in my free time. And These landscape shots, a lot of them were from an area, from a national park in Germany, where they lived really nearby and went there a lot also. And that gave me a connection to them basically. So they booked me not just because of that, because as I just said, I believe they also booked me because of the super cheap price. But nonetheless, I got the client, I got the order, and this was pretty cool, honestly, that my, basically landscape pictures that had nothing to do with wedding photography still got me this client. At least they played a little part in it. So yeah, you can keep that in mind and try to make the most of what you already have. So now that we've talked about how you get your first client, I will tell you a few things that are important if you have your first client. For example, what is super important to build up a portfolio is to get the permissions of your clients to use their photos for your portfolio online. And this is not always so easy, because a lot of people, they don't feel really comfortable of their pictures going around basically all over the internet for the rest of eternity, which is very understandable. However, as I said, it is really important to you to get these portfolio pictures. So ask them if you can use them, and if they don't feel comfortable, you can offer them, for example, to blur out their faces so that you can't recognize them but still use the pictures. This is not optimal, because obviously it's always much nicer to have the full pictures with the face visible, but it is better than have nothing. So that is one thing that you can offer your clients if they do not feel comfortable with having their pictures on the internet. So another thing that is very important from the beginning on is your placement as a photographer in the internet, how you present yourself to potential clients. And one thing that is very important is giving your clients the feeling of confidence and the feeling of trust. So they trust you with this very important task, for example, of shooting their wedding, which is in best case a once in a lifetime scenario. So you must get it right on the first try, but more on that in another video. However, before you can even start taking pictures, you need to give them the confidence and the trust that you are the right man for the job. And because you most likely won't have the name as a big photographer at this point, otherwise you wouldn't watch this video right now, there is another way of getting this credibility basically, and I'm talking about reviews and Google ratings, for example. So I would definitely ask every client that you have to rate you on Google, for example, or the photography platform where they met you basically. However, when you don't have clients, you will not get reviews in the first place. So what you can do, I wouldn't necessarily recommend this, because I think it also will break some Google rules, I believe, is basically to ask friends. To ask friends to write some reviews, not too much, not like hundreds of reviews, but 1 or 2 or 3 reviews from your friends. So that people just have a better feeling booking you. But never create fake accounts and write your own reviews. I definitely wouldn't recommend it. You can see that in the very first second, I believe. So if you do it, which I, as said, wouldn't recommend, then use friends that have already basically a Google account and maybe had written some other reviews on Google and already have an active account. Then this looks at least real. But as I said, this is a little bit shady. So you have to decide that for yourself if you want to do it. But I just want to talk over everything that you can do when you're just starting out, and that is definitely an option. And when we talk about shady things, we come to the last point. And as I said, this is also a point that I wouldn't recommend doing. But we live in the year 2025 and we have great technological improvements made over the last years. And one of them is obviously AI. You can generate pictures that look absolutely photorealistic and basically use them as your portfolio photos. But as I said, this is not fair to the client. It is an option. I think a lot of people thought about it, maybe some did it. As I said, I wouldn't recommend it, but nonetheless, I want to talk about that now a little bit here. And then you can decide for yourself if you want to do it. And the first thing that is really important is that you only show pictures where you are 100% sure you can shoot them in the exact same way in real life. There is nothing more disappointing than having a client showing them beautiful pictures, super stunning pictures, and then when it comes to the real deal, you're on location shooting for them, the pictures look totally different and not as promised. That will give you bad Google reviews, which is the worst thing that you can have. So never do this. What I, for example, would never do is creating really close-up shots where you have a lot of details of a special person, for example, as an AI generated picture, because it will most of the time don't look real, and as I said, it is really unfair to the client. So for example, you could use wide angle shots where you have a lot of people and use stuff like that. This is, I think, a little bit yeah, less shady and less unfair to your potential client. And as I said a few times, I wouldn't recommend doing that, but it is something that can help these days. And this is also something that you have to decide for yourself if you want to do it. As I said, just do it if you are 100% confident that you can shoot photos like you posted on the internet. This is super important. And don't, promise your client things that you can't do later on. This is very, very disappointing for them and for you as well. So at last, I just want to quickly mention one more thing here, and I talked about that really, really shortly in the beginning as well. So what you can always do is search for new connections and just ask people. Ask, for example, photographers on Instagram that you like, if you can join them on the wedding day, and work for free obviously in the beginning, so that you can get some experience, which is honestly a pretty good idea. And then you have real portfolio photos, which are always way better obviously. So as I said, try to get new connections. It don't always works out, but if it do work out, it is pretty cool to have these connections, and you will need them later on as well. It is always important. Basically, I believe in every branch and in every job that you have connections, and you are well connected to your colleagues and people who do the same as you. So honestly, this is always a good idea to try to connect, and I definitely would recommend to do so. So that's already it for today. If you have enjoyed watching this video, thank you so much for doing so. Feel free to leave a like and a comment, and also feel free to check out my YouTube channel, where I have a ton of other videos about photography related topics. So check them out. But for now, I wish you a great day. I wish you a great week, and I hope I see you in next week's video. So see you then, and goodbye.